Good day, Hudson Valley. I'm your host, Lisa Caslin, and welcome to our show where we bring you the best of what's happening and who's happening in Putnam, Northern Westchester, and Southern Dutchess. Today we're kicking off a four-part series about community behavioral health, and our featured expert is Putnam Family and Community Services. Today's show will cover a very timely topic and an unfortunate topic, the heroin epidemic and its pervasiveness throughout our community, particularly in Putnam County. Our guests are here to shed light on that crisis as well as give us hope for those who are suffering with this illness for recovery. I'd like to start by introducing Diane Russo. She's the Executive Director of Putnam Family and Community Services. Welcome.
Thank you.
Susan Salomone, co-founder of Drug Crisis in Our Backyard. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Doreen Lockwood. Doreen is the Program Director for Chemical Dependency Treatment and Prevention Services for Putnam County Family and Community Services. Welcome. Diane, before we get into the meat of the discussion today, substance abuse, your little agency does a lot of major work in the community. I read recently that you're servicing about 1 in 12 of the county's residents. That's a pretty big number. Can you talk a little bit about the agency and some of the programs that you're providing?
Sure. Putnam Family and Community Services is the only private, not-for-profit mental health and chemical dependency outpatient treatment agency in Putnam. So that's why we serve so many people. We have over 20 programs that treat children, adolescents, adults, and families, as well as veterans and seniors. Mm-hmm. We work on site. We are at 1808 Route 6. Mm-hmm. We also have off-site satellites in Brewster, and we work as well in the schools doing prevention, which I'm sure Doreen will talk more about. And I guess someone once said we're the best kept secret in Putnam, mm-hmm. and people, say we pass, your sign all the time, but we don't know what you do. Mm-hmm. But when people need us, we are there, and we do provide affordable behavioral health services. Our biggest program is our mental health clinic, mm-hmm. where we treat over 800 people. Wow. And we have a variety of professionals that work for us, psychiatrists, social workers, nurse practitioners, nurses. In Doreen's program, we have certified counselors for mm-hmm. Substance abuse. Mm-hmm. Our PROS program, that's a very special program. We treat people who have been suffering for years with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Mm-hmm. And what's so special about that program, what's so unique, these are people that in the past were institutionalized, mm-hmm. that were never given hope mm-hmm. to realize their dreams. They were told, you can never go to work, you can never get married, you can never have relationships, you can't go to school. And when they come to us, and with all our programs, we say to people, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? Because we believe in recovery. Mm-hmm. We believe in wellness. We believe that every person who has mental health challenges or substance abuse problems can get better. And we believe in people until they can believe in themselves. And that's what's so important. Mm. People who would never get a job and never have a family have hope. And that's really our mission, is to partner with community agencies like Drug Crisis mm-hmm. in Our Backyard, as well as the Department of Social Services, the Putnam County Department of Health, mm-hmm. and many providers to work together so we can foster hope, not only for people that come to us, mm-hmm. but in the community as a whole. Yeah. So it's really important that people know who we are, know that our services are available, and we wrap our services around the people that come through our doors.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I know that you have a very big event coming up. It's your annual fundraiser
Yes.
in October, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the theme this year is going to be about the drug crisis, right?
Yes.
In large part. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that Susan is being honored along with the other co-founders of Drug Crisis in Our Backyard. Why is this event so important this year? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we need to get the message out about what's happening, not only in our country, but in our community. Putnam County is one of the smallest counties in New York State. Yet we have a very high rate of overdose from drugs, and we keep losing our young people, and we have to get the message out to the community, to parents, to the schools, to the kids themselves that, you can die. I mean, this isn't, this is not some video game where you can turn it off. You can die. And we have to educate our people, which is what Drug Crisis in Our Backyard does. And we work with them, along with communities that care, to get these messages out.
So tell me a little bit about the event in terms of where is it, you spoke about, I know Susan is being honored. Anything else that you can tell us?
Yeah, well, this year's focus is on, substance abuse. And the event last year that we had was very successful. We honored People Inc., Steve Michio, and that is a peer-run support agency. It's hospital diversion. So instead of somebody going to the ER when they have a psychiatric crisis, they can go to a house, which is run by peers to de-escalate, and so they don't have to go to a hospital. We also recognized Deidre Smith last year, who was a recipient of our services, and she spoke about her journey of recovery, which, mental health and chemical dependency is not a sexy cause to support.
Right, there's no cute puppies.
No, but I have to tell you, if you ask anyone, just go up to anyone and ask them, do you know someone who has mental health challenges? Do you know someone who has addiction? Everyone will say yes. And so we have to reduce the stigma, educate the public, and that's what we do at our events. We educate people. And so this year, we are educating them about the addiction.
And you have a new award this year, the Sid Gibson.
Yes, it's the Sid Gibson Award. Sid was a wonderful man who passed away recently. He was one of our biggest donors, and he was in recovery himself and was very open about it and spoke about his journey. And so in his honor, we created the Sid Gibson Award, and this year at our event, we will present the award to Susan and Steve Salamone, along with Carol and Lou Christensen, who formed Drug Crisis in Our Backyard. And the event is Friday, October 17th at the Salem Golf Club in North Salem.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful. So, now as we kind of bridge to the substance abuse discussion, I couldn't miss the fact that Senator Schumer arrived in our county last month, and during the press conference, he declared the heroin abuse in Putnam County to be an epidemic that required federal attention as well as funding. And I know you spoke at that event also, Susan, and told folks about your personal tragedy, the worst tragedy that can come out of substance abuse, the death of your son Justin 2 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about that personal journey and how it led you to co-founding Drug Crisis in Our Backyard?
Yes, I'm happy to be here, and as Diane said, we have to keep talking about it in order to reduce the stigma around drug addiction. It's the only way people are going to come forward and look for help. So my son Justin had started smoking marijuana at 16 years old, and that was his foray into drugs. That was the entree, and he fooled around with drugs until he was about 23, 24, and then we found out he was using Oxycontin, which is a very strong legal prescription medication that is prescribed by doctors for, it was originally supposed to be prescribed only for terminal illnesses, but somehow it was being prescribed for many different things, for everything, back pain, and Vicodin, which is also a very strong addictive drug, was being prescribed for teeth problem. If you have a tooth pulled, the doctor's prescribing Vicodin. So he got addicted to Oxycontin and went from Oxycontin to heroin, because heroin is much cheaper than prescription medication. Prescription medication like Oxycontin is $1 a milligram, and they would take 80 milligrams at one time, an 80 milligram pill, so it's $80 for one pill, whereas heroin is $5 a bag. $10 a bag. So he became addicted to heroin, and he struggled trying to get off it for about 5 years, and he was not successful, although he did have periods of sobriety, and he was very connected with AA and treatment programs. In the end, he could not stay away from it. He would get like 7 months and then go back. It was really, really, really unbelievable, because as a parent, that's when you say, when you see them starting to slip again, it's like, what? I can't believe it. I can't believe this is happening. What do we do now? And you're afraid the household becomes very afraid of this big white elephant in the middle of the room.
Right.
And he passed away he actually had his first overdose, he had a brain injury, and he was disabled. He couldn't work. He had a movement disorder. He couldn't play his guitar, which was really his passion. But he was in there, and we knew that he was in there because he had told people, very close friends here in Putnam, that he knew he did this to himself, and how could he ever live like this?
Yeah.
He went into a group home May 15th. Because it was time for him to leave our house. He was 29.
Yeah.
He had to find his own way, and he OD'd on May 29th. And it was terrible.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article for the newspaper, the Mahopac News, and called Saving Justin. And Carol Christensen, Lou Christensen called me the day it came out, which was June 9th, and told me, June 14th, because Eric died on June 9th, and told me that they had just buried their son, Eric. And we got together, and then we talked about it. We were angry. I guess the strongest feeling we all had was anger.
Does the anger come from the fact that your son was able to get those drugs, or was the anger, you were angry at your son for what he did to himself?
I think it's more of, first of all, it was very much under the covers at that time. Like, we didn't even know what was going on. It was like, how could our son be using heroin? Like, now it's out, we're talking about it, and that's why we're talking about it, because we felt like we were quite alone in this problem. Really, we didn't know where to turn. So, our anger, I think, was more at a system that failed to address the fact that this was happening. Which obviously now we know that it was happening, because we hear that it's been happening since about 1999, when it became, when Purdue Pharma put OxyContin on the streets, really.
When pharmacies really started flooding the market with advertising, and so the game changed, right?
Yes, so we were really angry at the system. And that's when we started this as a grassroots organization to bring people out to talk about it. And we've been talking about it ever since. And we're growing in numbers, and we've got a lot of events. And we're so thankful to be honored at this event in Putnam. We were shocked, really, when Doreen told us. And we were very, very happy to be able to keep talking about it. That is our goal, to be on shows like this so that we can let people hear over and over again that this is really happening, and it could happen to anyone.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So if you were to identify a type, and for lack of a better description, and I know you don't really like that terminology, but is there a sort of person, are there personality characteristics that are apparent in people who might be more likely to become addicted to drugs?
Anyone can become addicted to heroin, prescription drugs, alcohol, cocaine. Alcohol and substance abuse, dependence, and abuse do not discriminate. As Diane said earlier, if you ask anyone if they know someone who has an alcohol or drug problem, or if they know someone who has died in recent years, they will say yes. The face of addiction has changed. When I came to work in Putnam 15 years ago, our average client was probably a white middle-class male abusing alcohol and marijuana and some cocaine. Currently, our average client is between the ages of 19 and 28 and is abusing prescription drugs and or heroin. Also, the epidemic does not discriminate, though. There's a big opiate problem with women. There's a big opiate problem with older adults who begin to take medicine. As Susan had said earlier, not only was it marketing by the pharmaceutical companies, they would aggressively approach doctors about prescription drugs, narcotics in particular, pain relievers, and they would give them the false assumption that these drugs were safe, that the quote they gave people was that only 1% of the people would become addicted. And that was from a study from a long time ago, in a very small study. And that cannot be further from the truth, because the very physiological nature of narcotics is that someone becomes addicted and physiologically dependent upon them. And that's where we started, heard this happening. That's why, I always say it's not just a heroin problem, it's a prescription drug problem, because it's so accessible, it's easy to get. The average young person or adult gets it from someone's medication cabinet. That's why we tell people to please count your medicine, properly dispose of expired medications, and lock up controlled substances, because that is where the epidemic began also, along with in the offices of dentists and doctors.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question. I mean, first is, how do you practically prevent kids or a loved one from, going into your medicine cabinet and literally taking your drugs? And then the next question is, if this epidemic started with prescription medication, doctors, I assume, have some culpability here, right? They should be trained and they should know the signs. I mean, everybody's heard of this term, doctor shopping. So, you're out of your OxyContin or whatever it is. Dr. Smith doesn't want to give you any anymore, and then you go to Dr. Johnson, and he's more than willing. How come there's no connection there? How come one doctor won't know that another doctor? Shouldn't there be a way to connect
There
those
is
dots?
now.
There is. Okay.
There have been many changes in the past 2 years in our system. As Susan said, there was good reason to be angry at the system. But one of the improvements in the system is we have the iStop program. So now if someone goes to a doctor and they get a controlled substances, there is a monitoring system that the doctor has to go on and check all the time, and so do pharmacists. So that can prevent that from happening. So if I go to Dr. Smith and I get a narcotic, but then I go to Dr. Jones has to look on that system, and they have to record it and they have to document it. So, and also Medicaid and many insurance companies also communicate with doctors if someone attempts to do that. So there are many things within the system that are working to stem the tide, for lack of a better word, and that's
I'd like
one of
to
them.
also add to that the doctors become culpable for the medication that they prescribe, so they're less apt to easily give out a prescription for Vicodin or OxyContin, Percocet. These are the names that they come by. Yeah, Percocet is oxycodone. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, it's just a brand name, Percocet. Okay. And it gives them, the doctors, a reason to not do it, because they now have their name on that iStop law and the monitoring system. So it really is a great thing that passed. However, because people that are already addicted to
they're using more heroin.
Are now using more heroin because they're addicted. So this is a unfortunate circumstance that occurred because of the iStop law.
Yeah. Well.
And also, drug dealers, they're buying them on the street. And the face of a drug dealer is a white middle-class kid who could be your neighbor. We have a treatment court in our county, and probably 85% of the people in there are there for selling drugs. And they could be my son, they could be your son, they could be your son. And that's a little bit scary as well. So the availability is there. In Putnam County, people deliver. So one of the great things about Senator Schumer is that he made this a high traffic area, because we're right on the highway. We're right on 84. We're right near Connecticut. We're in between Westchester and Dutchess. So hopefully there'll be some funding for enforcement, education, treatment, and awareness. And there's also a lot of initiatives too. You would think that healthcare professionals are trained in addiction and trained to identify the signs and symptoms of addiction, but they're not. They get, actually, doctors, nurses, and dentists and veterinarians get very little training in alcohol and substance abuse. And that's something that is beginning to change and needs to change, because healthcare providers are on the front line of seeing people that may have the beginnings of a substance use disorder. So that's another very important initiative that we need to speak very loudly about.
Yeah, that's a good point. One other point that I think is important, you talked about the stigma, Diane, and I think we all know that there's a stigma associated with heroin addiction. People feel ashamed, parents feel ashamed. So does that cause resistance in terms of opening up about it and even getting help? And if the answer is yes, how do we reach those people before it's too late?
Well, that's our mission. Our
Yeah.
mission is to bring awareness of the rampant use of heroin and legal opiates in our community. That is our mission. And we feel that the more we talk about it, the more normalized it becomes with shows like this, the work that they're doing, the work that the state of New York is doing. Governor Cuomo signed 12 bills into law in June that you're going to see a change in the way heroin addiction is being addressed. And I think the more we talk about it, the more normalized we become about it, the less afraid people, parents especially, are going to be to look for help for their kids, because it is embarrassing. I was embarrassed to make calls to the Karen Foundation and other treatment centers. I was, it was embarrassing that my son, what did I do wrong to make my son be a heroin addict? That's how parents feel about it. The other thing is that there's a march in Washington on September 28th. It's called Fed Up. And it is, we expect to have lots and lots of people there walking to the Capitol and demanding acknowledgement of the fact that this is an epidemic in our country, because the White House hasn't come out on this yet. I mean, the White House, the administration has to come out on this. Our state is coming out on it now. Vermont has come out on it. But the president has to come out on it so that people will feel like they're not alone.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's get down to some practical signs that parents or any loved one may notice, changes that would indicate that there may be drug use or a drug problem happening. What should they look for?
Yes.
Okay. There are many different signs and symptoms, but one of the major ones is that you will visibly see someone under the influence of alcohol or drugs. They may have red eyes, they may have slurred speech, they may be very lethargic and have droopy eyes, which is something you see with opiates and narcotics. People become very lethargic and they nod and they look like they're falling asleep. You may see abrupt changes in their attitude and behavior, changes in their friends. As Susan had said, her son earlier in a conversation with us, her son wouldn't come around the family as much, didn't want his picture taken. You may find substances in the house, and of course, young people still will say, that's not mine, it's my friend's, which absolutely is not true. So if you find things that are drug paraphernalia, and I think parents need to Google drug paraphernalia because you'd be surprised what it is. Spoons may be missing, you see aluminum foil, you see straws, you see little baggies, you find pills in their drawer or in their backpack, you find baggies of marijuana. There's just so many different things. They may no longer engage in activities that they once engaged in. If someone's in high school, they may stop being involved in sports and after school activities. They may change friends that they hang out with. I strongly encourage people to look on our website and look up the signs and symptoms. And as Susan has said, don't be afraid to talk about it and ask questions, because the younger someone is when you intervene on the process, the less likely it will become an abuse or dependence problem. So it's really important to be proactive and to talk about it, to talk to your family physician about it, to talk to a family friend, to talk to a counselor at an agency such as ours or a counselor at school. We all have our own natural supports, people that are our go-to people, and probably most of us even know someone who is in recovery who might be able to help us, talk to a loved one. So that's the biggest thing, to not keep it a secret.
Before we come to a close, I want to make sure that we talk specifically about the programs that you're offering and maybe how you're partnering both with Drug Crisis in Our Backyard and other agencies to fill any gaps associated with this issue.
Well, we provide outpatient treatment, which is individual group counseling, but we also do assessment. So we can also assess someone and refer them to our community partners like Arms Acres, St. Christopher's, for higher levels of treatment. There are many levels of treatment. There's day treatment, there's intensive treatment, there's detox, there's rehab, there's residential treatment. So we work with our community partners to best identify what is good for that person. We work with Drug Crisis in Our Backyard. We've done Narcan training, which is overdose reversal training for people who actually use for their family members, for providers, so that if someone has an overdose, we can reverse that overdose, and we're being trained to be trainers so that we'll be able to do that throughout the community. There's a recovery walk on September 27th at FDR Park. And we also are a member of the Putnam County Communities That Care Coalition. We'll be starting a big campaign about the heroin epidemic coming up later this year and into next year, where there'll be public service announcements, posters, information in the movie theaters, and we really work to get everyone in the community involved on our coalition. We have the schools involved, we have religious organizations, spiritual organizations, law enforcement, and we work to do medication take-back days where people can bring in medication that's no longer usable and it gets properly disposed of. So we all work in partnership, because in order to reduce the stigma, we do have to work together, and we do have to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. And that's what I always say about Susan and Steve and Lou and Carol, that they give voice to their sons who can no longer speak for themselves, and the over 130 people that die each day from opiate addiction, and to the family members who are afraid to speak up about this problem. And we want them to know that we're all here to help.
Okay. Many people feel that drug addiction is, there's no way out. It's the end. Is there hope? And do you have any examples of happy endings?
Yes, we have 2 family members that have overcome heroin addiction. And one of them actually went to Judge Reese's drug court. And she now is, my son is dead 2 years, a little more than 2 years. She got clean right after Justin passed away. And I know that my son has gotten a lot of people clean. I know that.
Yeah.
And she's now married, living in Eastchester. And, she made it. She's good. And I'm
Okay,
sure Doreen
great.
has people that she
We're
knows
almost
also.
out of time. So I just want to, we should have a graphic that has all of your websites. So I want to make sure everybody sees that and looks you guys up. And before we close, I'd like Diane to remind us the details again for your benefit.
Okay, the benefit will be on Friday, October 17th at the Salem Golf Club in North Salem, where we'll be presenting the Sid Gibson Award, the first one, to drug crisis in our backyard. So if you'd like to attend or you would like more information, please go to our website. There's the information you'll find
On
right
the
there.
screen. Yeah, it should be there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to be posting an article on the Putnam Family and Community Services website. The information is on the screen about signs to look for to help your loved one through this tough time if you think that they have a drug problem. As always, we look forward to your comments. If you have a suggestion on a topic or a guest that you'd like us to cover, please go to gooddayhudsonvalley.com. There's contact information there, and we'd love to hear from you. Until then, have a great day, Hudson Valley.